Yeah. So we had finished the verse number second of the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And in this particular chapter, Bhagwan has explained it at length, and Sankara Bhashya, in fact, elaborated on that, gave a clear idea about how these Param Brahman or Parameshwara and Samsara, which appear to be mutually opposite, and one is false, the other one is real, and why the false appears as real. The Samsara, which is fundamentally not real, appears as real, that this Parameshwara, who is the cause of this, is not having any fundamental relationship with it. This relationship between Parameshwara and Samsara is also an imaginary relationship. This imagination is a product of the impressions all of us have over thousands and millions of words, that avidya, as a result of which we are confusing one as many. That is what the Upanishads have told us. But this samsara is not phenomenally false. This is phenomenally real, but not fundamentally real. So Paramarthika Satya is not Paramarthika Satya, but it is Vyavaharika Satya. And we had a lot of discussion yesterday, and we have summarized that yesterday. What is Kshetrajna? That is one only. We don't have to imagine that every individual is a Kshetrajna. Even though there is the whole study word is both for Vyasti and Samasti. Kshetrajna is one, but also sort of it appears as many. And he has to sort of elaborate on this. And the discussion on what he has summarily presented in verse number 1 and 2 is going to elaborate now, verse 3 onwards, in a few slokas, or few slokas of the chapter. Tat khetram jasya yadrikya yadvikari yatasya yat satayo yat prabhavasya tatsamasena me shrunu. So to this particular couple of lines, which again kind of summarizes in advance the discussion which is going to follow. It's kind of briefly trying to capture this, and the discussion will follow from this. That's why Bhagavan has sort of mentioned it here. And Shankaracharya has a beautiful introduction to that. He's saying, Idam Sariram Ityadi Shloka Upadishtasya Bhagavan Idam Sariram. This is Kshetra, that's how you should know. And Kshetrajna is the one who is the knower of this. The Kshetra and the Kshetrajna are different. You have to have that Viveka. And Kshetra Adhyayarthasya Sangraha Slokaha. So this particular thing is a Sangraha Sloka. What is a Sangraha Sloka? In different, in our tradition, there are some very fundamental verses or sentences which summarize the whole lot of philosophy, which will be elaborated. And how do you remember all the arguments? There will be one sloka where the long discussion is kind of summarized and compiled in just one or two sentences. That is the Sangraha sloka. So if you remember that sloka, you will be able to sort of spread that out and link them up with different arguments and different information which will follow in that particular text. So in Upanishads also there are Sangraha Vakya. Similarly, in any particular sloka, any argument, there will be always a Sangraha Vakya or Sangraha Sloka. So this is the Sangraha Sloka which has been given here. Ayam Upanyasyate Tat Khetram Yatsa Ityadi Bachakya Sitasya. Whatever is going to be explained in future, Hi Arthasya Sangraha Upanyaso Nyaya iti. So whatever you're going to go on elaborating, it is always an interesting thing. Like, for example, when you do documentation training, the trainer sort of tells you that if you're writing anything, you're writing a brochure or you're writing anything, the first line of that paragraph should in a way summarize what is going to be there in that paragraph. Because if you start in a roundabout way, person may lose interest. So those who get into copy editing or getting into writing reports or souvenirs and stuff like that, they are given this advice that one idea, one sentence, one paragraph, one concept, and that should be captured in brief in the first line itself. That's one thing which is, there was a time where I was doing these kind of trainings. So that is one key advice which is given, and that's what Bhagavan is doing right now. Tat Khetram, and that is Khetra, because in the first two verses, he has already discussed about it, isn't it? He has already discussed, and here he's kind of repeating this particular thing, word Khetra, which is already there in the first, idam sariram kaunteya Khetra mitya vidiyate, this body is Vyasti or Samasti, or the individual, or Etad yo vestitam prahu, the one who knows this, Kshetrajna iti tadvidaha. That is all the experts, the philosophers, they have mentioned that. The one who know the difference between Kshetrajna and Kshetra. That was the first verse. Kshetrayam chapi mam vidhi sarva Kshetreshu bharata. There is this one Kshetrajna in all the Kshetras. Bhagavan clearly mentions the Advaita point of view. I mean, a lot of people might say and twist this interpretation, but it's very obviously making it very clear that there is only one Kshetrajna, that is Ishvara. Kshetra Kshetrajna yor jnanam, yad jnanam, yad tad jnanam matam mama. That is the only knowledge which matters, because that is one which is going to give you a real understanding of this whole universe. In a way, the second verse, if you pay attention to it, it underlines, emphasizes, and establishes in no uncertain terms that all of us appear to be different with individual consciousness. But Bhagavan is saying there is only one consciousness in all of this, which appear as multiples. And that's what he captures here. And now, because Kshetra is multiple, right? So he has to explain why this Kshetra appears as multiple and how to make sense of it. And that he's going to elaborate. He's saying Tat Kshetram, that Kshetra which I mentioned in the first two verses. Yatcha Yadricha, the way it is, what is that Kshetra? And what are the dharmas, what are the qualities? How do you describe it? Yadricha. Yad Vikari Yatasya Yat. And what kind of modifications that sort of undergoes? In what form? Yatasya Yat. And then what kind of consequences follow? What are the karyas? There are karanas and karyas. There are upadana karanas, and then there are products, right? Like, for example, you have sugar and you prepare a lot of candies. The samsara is karya rupa. This is the world of effects. If you want to have a real understanding, you have to penetrate the effects to go to the roots and go to the causes of it. And ultimately, we'll be able to reach this Paramatma. Sasa yo yat prabhavasya. And then compared to this, the one who is a creator, yatasya yat, he mentioned, then he says, okay, these are these karyas, but coming out of what? Which is the causative factor of all that. And Bhagavan has mentioned that in chapter 7, 8, and 9, and we have dealt with it. He's sort of repeating it. Sasa yo, yah, that, who is he? Yat prabhavasya. And the person out of yat is yatsya here. Because of whose influence, because of whose creative energy, because of whose powers, all these Kshetras appear. Tat samasena, in brief, in summary, me srunu, hear from me. That is the brief meaning of it. We will do Sankara Bhashya, and we will, earlier we sort of kind of ignored Madhusudana for the first two verses because he sort of has given such a long lecture, but we will do, he has just written 4-5 lines for verse number 2, where Shankaracharya has written several paragraphs. We will do the Madhusudana Tika also for 2 as well as 3 and 4 today. So let's look at Shankaracharya first, because he sort of is trying to do Anvaya, in a way, just trying to make sense of whatever is mentioned in these verses. And what is that? Yat nirdishtam idam sariram iti tat sabdena paramushrati. So tat kshetra, that is kshetra, that is what it's saying. Why that particular? Yatcha yadricha. that Kshetra, Tat Kshetra, that Kshetra, the way it is and the way it is made of. That is what it's trying to say. Yat Nirdishtam idam saridam iti tat sabdena paramashyati. By this tat word is referring this sarira, this body, this whole Jada Varga, everything that appears. Yacha idam nirdishtam kshetram. The way, with the help of what all this has, how has it been sort of constructed, how this samsara happens, how this material universe in multiple colors and forms and qualities and natures, how has it become possible? Tat tadrik yadrik swakeihi dharmeihi, and all of these that you see, whether it's a river or a mountain or an animal or a bird or a snake or a reptile, and look at the human beings, all of us are different. Why do we have so many qualities? We behave differently, we do different things. And that is the greatest mystery, isn't it? We struggle to make sense of it. And Bhagavan is saying, I'll give you some hints why all these people behave differently and what are these differences made of? What is the material out of which all these characters are emerging? And so many people with so many qualities, right? He has already hinted about it in chapter 6, in chapter 3 and 4. We have already heard about this sattva, tamas, and rajas, isn't it? And in this chapter 6, he has mentioned how the mind runs around. In chapter 2, he mentioned while explaining this Sita Pragya, how the intelligent one behaves. So he has already talked about human psychology. Human psychology in a great way in the first 6 chapters. And then this whole Jada Varga and how it all happens, he has mentioned that in chapter 7, isn't it? What is the Astadha Prakriti? And then there is Para Prakriti. He has also hinted. He's elaborating on that in this chapter. Here, Yacha idam nirdishtam system. The way it is kind of nirdishta, has appeared in a certain definite form. Tat yadrisam swakyehi dharmehi, and with their own qualities, the way they are appearing, how they are appearing, and with what kind of qualities associated with them that they appear. Sa sabdaha, that yacha yadricha, that sa, why is it mentioned? There is no such, in grammar, sa sabda, there has to be something, some cause as to why the sa has to be there, isn't it? Either you are trying to mention two, you're trying to emphasize something. So there is a whole science about why the sa can be used here. What is the purpose? He's saying there is no specific purpose. He's saying samuchayartho yad vikari yo vikaraha. It's only to sort of say that all of these need to be taken together. Samuchayartha yad vikari yo vikaraha asya tad yad vikari. And this yad vikari is explaining, and all these vikaris, vikarvala, all these with differences, with modifications. All of us undergo modifications. Yad vikari, and what are the causes as a result of which we undergo these changes and modifications. Yad vikari yataha yasmacha karyam utpadyate iti vakyasesha. And then yatah yas, he mentioned towards that in the end. Then why these things sort of happen the way they do. So what are the things he's mentioned? What explains their existence? That is point number one. They exist. That is not enough. They have certain name and form, certain qualities, how they behave. And then finally, how they undergo certain changes. They also cause a lot of changes. This whole process in samsara continues. Like a man is born, he gives birth to children. Every person is here, he does certain things, he causes a whole chain of activities. This whole process and this whole, everybody is an effect, but he's also playing certain causative roles. So this whole conundrum of samsara, how do we make sense of it? That is what he's going to mention. And then in the next line, he's talking about the Kshetrajna, as a result of which all these things are happening. So Sata Yaha, and that, who is that person? Yaha, who? Kshetrajna Nirdishtaha. Sa Yat Prabhavo, Ye Prabhavaha, Upadhikritaha Saktayaha, Yasya Saha Yat Prabhavaha. Yat Prabhava, that Samasa is doing like this. Ye prabhavaha. Saha yat prabhava. He is just prabhava. Yasya prabhava. Yas prabhava. He is having all these influences, all these abilities to create all these things. He is describing it. वो बहुत प्रभावशील आदमी है. You know, the way we say he's a very influential, powerful person, and this Ishvara, this Kshetrajna, is the cause of everything. And all these things that happen is essentially an outcome of the way he manifests, and that's how he's capturing it. Ye prabhava, they are not reality. That's why he uses his word upadhikritaha. So these are all names and forms, you know, because only Ishvara is Satya, he has already explained. So how do you make sense of samsara? So samsara are names and forms. Mrittika ityavam satyam vacharambhana vikaro namadheya. That is what Upanishad says. They are all names and forms. Like you say ghata, then you say that this is a ghada, this is a clay horse, this is a clay elephant, this is a clay pot. What is true? The clay is true. Like all the gold ornaments, the names are given that this is a necklace, this is what is actually true in that. The necklace cannot exist without gold. Gold can exist without necklace. What is true can exist, that is gold. So that word necklace here essentially is a name given to a certain fame, certain form, and that form cannot exist without gold. In the golden necklace, the necklace part cannot exist without gold. It is dependent on the gold thing. The gold appears in a certain form. We use the word necklace. And that word necklace refers to that form of the gold. So mrittike chevam satyam. That what is true here is only gold. Similarly, yat then he's saying yat prabhavaha. In these prabhava, what kind of prabhava? What is these creations? Upadhi kritaha. These are all superimposed names and forms. Saktayaha yasya, and this is energy with which is creating all this. Yasya saha yat prabhava. Tat kshetra kshetrajnaho. And then if you know the understanding of kshetra and kshetrajnaha, yathatmyam, you know it. Yathatmya means you know it in their pure nature. You know them as they are. Yatha visheshitam. The way they are visheshita means visheshana yukta. The way they have been specified. The way they appear. Like for example, if you say Sundara Balakaha, so you are referring to what? A Balaka with Sundarata. Tikshna Balakaha, you are referring to a boy who is having a very sharp mind. Tikshna Balakaha. Or Sudarshana Balakaha is a very handsome boy. So Visheshita, the way that is kind of is defined with details. And that's what I think Yatha Visheshitam Samasena. That Kshetra and Kshetrajna and what are they and what is their relationship or anything. The way the Shastras are describing them and explaining them, I'll try to explain to you Samasena in brief. Shankshepena in very brief. So essentially saying that I'm not going to waste too much of your time. That he might do depending on what kind of subject matter he's dealing with. But he's saying Sankshepana me mama vakyatah shrunu. Listen to my words. Shrutva avadharaya ityartha. So you listen to them, and then if you listen, you're going to make sense of it. That is what he mentions. So let us look at how our Madhusudana Saraswati sort of makes sense of it. He has done it in a beautiful way, and that's why I'm sort of going there. Give me 1 second. What is it? Yeah. So before this, if we sort of, because he has given a very brief commentary on verse number 2, and we had ignored that, and so I'm just quickly sort of looking at it so that it's also on the table. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetrishu harata kshetra kshetragyam jnanam yattad jnanam matam mama sarva kshetrishu yah ekah kshetragyah. So these bodies are different. This jada varga, this sansara is different. But the knower of all this is only one. That Chaitanya is one only. Swaprakasa Chaitanya Rupa. What is that? It's not an individual. It is not a cat or a dog. It's not a watchman. It's not a physical body. Swaprakasa Chaitanya Rupa. It is Chaitanya Rupa, but not paratantra, not dependent on something else. Like a lamp sort of lights itself as well as the room. This is so prakasa chaitanya rupa. So it's not a physical light. It is chaitanya rupa so prakasa. Nitya, that is that, that kala. Desa kala vastu paricheda sunya. So kala paricheda sunyata is kind of established here. There is no limitation in terms of time. It is nitya. Anadi, ananta. Vibhuscha. So desa parichinnatva is removed. There is no physical limitation. It is not 5 square feet or 5 million square feet. Vibhuscha is sarvavyapaka. Then what? Tam avidya adhyarupida kartutva bhoktutvadi sansara dharmam. And then this whole sansara, that it appears as if it's an animal, it's a bird or anything, that particular Soprakasa Chaitanya Swarupa appears because of superimpositions. The way the rope appears as a snake, this Param Brahman appears as sansara because of vivarta, of faulty reflection or projection. Kshetragyam avidyaka rupa parityagena. And if you, how can you see that? Mama Maya Duratyaya, he has already mentioned earlier. In order to overcome this Maya, this covering, this wrapper on the pure nature of the self, you have to focus on me. That's what Bhagavan has advised. And that's what he is saying here again. So what is he saying here? So the Abhidyaka Rupa Parityagena, this Kshetragyam, you can know if you remove his wrapper. The false identification with snake, if you remove that snake perception, that belief that that's a snake, then you can actually clearly see. No, it's not a snake. What is it? Let me find out. It's a rope. Mam Ishwaram Asansarinam. Then you can know me. Who is me? I'm Ishwara, Asansari. I'm not Sansari. Advitiyam. There is no second. I'm only one. Advitiyam. Aditya Brahmananda Rupam. I'm Brahmananda, that ultimate Satchidananda Rupa, knowledge and consciousness and truth consciousness and bliss. That Rupa I am. Vidhi Janihi. Know me, O Bharata. Evam cha Kshetra Maya Kalpitam Mithya. The Kshetra is actually an illusion. The snake is an illusion. Rope is true, but the snake appears because the rope has a similarity. Depending on how the rope has been kept, you imagine the snake. If this rope is very thick, you think, what do you think? It's a python. If it's very thin, or if it's a slightly longer one, maybe you think it's a king cobra. Depending on how big is the rope, how the rope is there, you imagine the snake. But when it comes to Brahman and Sansara, Brahman has Maya. He can take any form. So it's all unimaginable. There is no such similarity between the rake and the rope and snake thing you can bring in here. That Adhyaropa aspect only you can take. That's what Shankaracharya said. Don't try to bring in other things into discussion. Only a superimposition, a false identification. That aspect is only the similarity between Drishtanta and Drashtantika. There is a truth, there is a point of focus, and there is an example. The similarity is superimposition. That rope snake is there, so you are saying that there is a Bhagavan. So what is the size? Then Desa Paricheda is there because you are saying that it is like a rope. No, these things are not mentioned. What is being talked about is only that particular aspect, similarity between Drishtanta and Drashtantika. What is the example and what we are discussing? The similarity between Brahma Sansara and rope snake. What is the similarity? Superimposition. That there is a false meaning, a false appearance taken as real. That is the similarity. And both are born out of ignorance or incorrect perception. That is the similarity. And in both the cases, the faulty perception, once removed, gives rise to knowledge. That is the similarity. That is what is mentioning here. Evam Kshetram Maya Kalpitam Mithya. Kshetragyascha, and who is Bhagavan Kshetragya? Paramartha Satyaha Tad Brahma Adhishtanam Iti. So Paramartha Satya. What is the Paramartha Satya? Brahman. And he is the foundation of Sansara. Is Sansara Satya? No. Sansara is Kalpita. So where is the snake? The snake is in the rope. But is the snake real? No. So the snake, the sarpa, is a Brahma, is a Mithya Jnana. And because of that faulty understanding, like for example, in the dark night, there is somebody, some lady, she has hung her sari, white sari, from the branches of a tree. Just imagine, she's a village woman. The village woman lives, and there is a tree, banyan tree, in the backyard. She's hanging her sari from a low hanging branch of that tree. And there is a city dweller or a town dweller or urban person who was walking, the trekker, he's taking rest. And suddenly he looks at that tree, and that white sari, which is hanging from a low hanging branch of that tree, it looks like a ghost. Then he shouts that I saw a spirit, and that spirit was standing just below the tree. He spreads a completely wrong thing. And that spirit was hanging from where? The spirit was hanging from that tree. But was there a spirit? Was there a ghost? No, it was a sari. That was a white sari hung from a low hanging branch of that tree at the backyard of a village lady who lives there. The city dweller has no idea, and he thinks he has met a ghost in this lonely village. He's a trekker. He tells all his friends, and they are doing WhatsApping. He's taken a picture, and then it is making international. It's viral. Then ghost perceived in a certain village in India. And people start doing research on it. It's quite possible. Ignorance spreads faster than knowledge. So this particular thing, Bhagavan says that this Param Brahma Paramartha Satya is the Adhisthana of Sansara. Is Sansara Satya? Sansara is Edmas Satya. Edmas is that ghost in that village. There was a white sari that is confused as a spirit. That is not the fault of that white sari. It is the fault of the people who confuse that as a spirit or a ghost or anything. That is what it's saying. Paramartha Satya Tad Brahma Adhishanamiti. Tad Brahma. That is mistakenly seen as Sansara, and that Sansara is Adhisthita in Brahman. But Adhishta doesn't mean like we keep a cup of tea on a table, not that way. Why? That cup of tea doesn't even exist. It is an appearance. The snake doesn't exist, but the rope is holding the snake. That is a manner of speaking. Adhishtanamiti Ketra Ketra Jnanam Sadeva Mukhya Sadhanatvat. That only will give you liberation. Why? You will lose interest in the samsara, which is an entrapment. I'm not saying that you break your family and misbehave with people and walk into the forest. I just today read that in Italy there was this guy who left the cities, the urban areas, for 32 years. He lived in an island all alone because he wanted to experience life on his own. He lived there, but the government of Italy sort of decided, you can Google and see the news today, they sort of said, we are going to convert this island to a biodiversity park. So you cannot leave, any human beings cannot be there. They gave him a lot of money, some pension or whatever. With that money, he came back to one of the cities and he bought a house and he has money to now live peacefully. He's already 82. Now, what does he do? He said, I didn't feel like talking to anyone because all this whole samsara was all Maya for me. 32 years I've lived in peace, watching birds in the sky, beautiful sky, lovely water, lovely greenery all around. There's nothing to discuss, nothing to fight against. It's all peace. Now in samsara, he had a lot of problem, and then finally agreed to re-enter samsara. It's like a sannyasi getting married. So he has come back to samsara after 32 years at the age of 82, and now TV people are going to interview him. Come back to samsara. Now here, that is different because here we are talking about moksha, sadhya mukti. It's not a physical distancing of a person from samsara. It is a psychological liberation where you are breaking the entrapment which is kind of holding you, the entrapment which is holding you, tying you down to a limited understanding of our own existence. Samsara is nothing in philosophical terms, if you look at it. It is a narrow understanding of who we are and what we want to do, and we are kind of stuck with a faulty way of relating ourselves to samsara through what are the relationships? Money exchange, give and take, marriage, family, children, all there. But there is a purer aspect of it when you connect with the truth aspect of this existence. The truth aspect of this existence is beyond this existence, and that is the Paramartha Satya. That is the difference between Vedanta and all other schools of thought, because they will say you sit, meditate on all that. And I was thinking about it. You sit in meditation for 20 hours, 500 years, whatever. You come back like that old man now, 32 years in an island, he's back, and then he will enter samsara. He's very jolly, well, happy, and he will have a conflict in 10 days. He has met some partner with him, maybe he'll have a conflict. You never know. So all these old problems will come back. So only meditation can silence the mind, cannot solve the problem of ignorance. That is what Vedanta emphasizes. Also, the Prasangika Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, says, no, you have to analyze. It is not about sitting, closing your eyes. They talk about analytical meditation, which we call nididhyasana, nischayatmika buddhi. You have to analyze. You have to analyze and discard things which are not relevant. It's not about becoming a dull-minded meditator. It's removing the causes of ignorance in the world of your consciousness by removing false thoughts. And then the pure awareness will be solid. This pure awareness is not by manipulation of your breath, which Kriya Yoga tells you or Pranayama tells you. Beginners fine. You need concentration, so you do that. But ultimately, you have to analyze. You have to discard things which are irrelevant. That is what Vedanta tells you. So now, Atra Jiva Ishwayor Avityako Vedaha. Jiva Ishwara, is there any difference actually? This Jiva, all that, is actually not different because it's a name and a form. Michyatvena. We are Jiva so far, we think our body is us, our mind is us. These are all temporary things. That consciousness within, which is within us, is no different from the pure consciousness. And this body will go. The pure consciousness is part of the pure consciousness. The pure consciousness continues. And the bubbles appear and disappear. The ocean remains. Jiva Ishvara Avityako Vedaha Paramarthikaha. So Abhedaha, really, fundamentally, there is no difference. Iti atra yuktayah bhasya kridvihi bannita. So all these great commentators on the Brahma Sutras and all the Upanishads. So this is bannita by Shankaracharya. Asmabhistu, and by us, Madhusudana Saraswati is such a great scholar, but so humble. Asmabhistu, Grantha Vistara Bhayat Rageva Bahudha Uktatvacha. Now Upanyastasa. So he's saying that Upanyastaha. So I'm not elaborating. Why? Because he's saying Shankaracharya इतना बोल दिए 2 नंबर श्लोक पर, हमें क्या कहने के लिए छोड़ा? उन्होंने सब बता दिया है, इसलिए हम कुछ नहीं कह रहे हैं. हम तो सिर्फ इनका समरी 2 लाइन में बता दिया. संसार झूठ है और सत्य तो है ब्रह्मन, और वो एक ही है, अनेक रूप से भाषित होता है, और वही ज्ञान है जो हमें ब्रह्म के ओर ले जाएगा. समासेन संक्षिप्तेन यही सत्य है. इतना हम कहते हैं बिकॉज भाष्यकार सब बता चुके हैं. Then in the next verse, Sat Kshetram Yasya Yadvikya Yad Vikari Yatasya Yat Satyo Yad Prabhavasya Sat Samasena Me Shrunu. And that is elaborating, saying it's beautiful what it does. Tad idam saridam iti prag uktam. Bhagavan, Lord Krishna, has told in the verse number 1. So, idam saridam iti prag uktam jada varga rupam. This is jada, not Chaitanya varga. Jada varga. Chaitanya is one only. Kshetram, that is what is Kshetra, the field of all this. This is the object of knowledge. This is the Kshetra, this is the field. Yaccha Swarupena Jada Drishya Parichinnadi Swabhabam. Yaccha Yadrikcha. There are 2 words. Yaccha, इसका स्वरूप क्या है? Yadrikcha, what are the vyavaharas? What are the qualities it has? Yeah, Yaccha, what is that Swarupa? Jada Drishya Paricchannadi Svabhavaha. So first thing is Jada. It is not Chetana, without consciousness. Then what? Parichina. It's always limited. It's not infinite. Why? Consciousness is infinite. Whether it is a body, human body or animal body, it will appear, it will disappear. It will always have this third vikara. Yayate, asti, vardhate, parinamate, viparinamate, and apakshiyate, vinasyati. These six vikaras will always be there. They'll appear, they will stabilize, they'll grow, then there'll be a bit of metamorphosis. Beard will come up, and then bald head will come up, and then it will become thinner and weaker and have all kinds of non-communicable long-term diseases like diabetes and cholesterol and all that, and then finally death. Apakshiyate vinasyati. So jada and drishya, it's also whatever is drishya is mithya. It is also objects of perception through the naked eye or through anumana and others. Drishya and parichinna, always limited. Adi swabhava. These are the qualities. These are the ways. These are the swabhava. Yadrikcha, ichchadi dharmakam. What is yadrik? What are this? Ichcha, dvesa, all these qualities here. We will discuss that in the next verse. In the verse number 5, I think it will come. So ichcha, dvesa, all these he'll speak. So ichchadika dharmakam, yad vikari, and it always undergoes modifications. Yehi indriyadi vikarehi uktam, and it kind of always what? You have a lot of modifications in it. By what? You can see those vikaras and modifications with your indriyas. You can watch, you can see that. Indriyadi vikari. And then, if you do Sankhya Tattva, you remember what is first there? You have that Mula Prakriti. And that Mula Prakriti then becomes what? Ahankara. Sorry, it becomes Buddhi, Mahatattva. Out of that, there is Ahankara, then Mana, then 5 Tanmatras. And out of that, what? You have these Dasa Indriyas, Jnana Indriyas, and Karma Indriyas. And then you have the Pancha Bhutas. That are the 24 Tattvas, right? That is what is mentioning. And yet Vikari. So what is, you have this Prakriti cha Vikrita. One is Mula Prakriti. That is not Vikari. Then you have this Buddhi and Ahankara and Mana and 5 Tanmatras. These are Prakriti Vikriti. Both Prakriti and Vikriti. They are Prakriti insofar as they are mother of all the changes. They are Vikriti insofar as they are Karya or a product of that Mula Prakriti, Abhyakta or Maya, whatever you call it. That is what Sankhya Tattva says. So he yad vikari indriyehi indriyadi vikarehi yuktam. Because these are the modifications it will undergo. Yatasya karanad yat karyam utpadyate iti. And out of this, other things kind of appear. Iti sesaha. Okay. Athava yataha prakriti purusha sanyogad bhavati. This sansara comes out of what? If you look at Sankhya Darsana, what do they say? That prakriti is there, purusha is there. And purusha sankalpa happens. In purusha, because of whatever reason, there is a sankalpa. Let's imagine. This whole creation anyway falls for a Vedanti. So that because of that sankalpa, that is, then what happens? The prakriti, which is always ready to serve, like the boss. Just imagine, and there's a powerful boss, and he has a very loyal assistant or a servant. And you will see, if you go to the ministers or bureaucrats, you will see that happening all the time. They know their, their boss's moods, and they know. Like, Hegel, the German philosopher, mentioned about what? He mentioned about slave morality and master morality. What is slave morality? His life's meaning emerges out of serving his master to the best of his ability. And the master's happiness comes out of his ability to protect the slaves to the best of his ability. That is how slave and master are made for each other. Okay? And what happens because of the slave morality? Some people have that slave morality. They're kind of all the time waiting to serve the master. The master sort of wakes up from sleep. He rushes to the kitchen and makes a hot cup of coffee and a couple of snacks and puts on the table. And if that guy smokes, the cigar is ready for him. He just wakes up, this patriarch, the smoke or matriarch, whatever. And she or he consumes a cup of tea, and they know where he's going to go. He's now going to the toilet, and then he wants the bath, and everything is kind of arranged for him. Everything is arranged. Okay, even you must have seen in some film in the olden days, and now maybe it applies to the big corporate bosses and the bureaucrats and politicians. These things are kind of arranged for him. So far, he's in that power of the position of power. I mean, the president of America pushed out of a White House, no cup of tea. You have to make your cup of tea, right? So he's saying that this Prakriti, that Maya, is waiting. And Purusha and Prakriti, they come, there is Sannidhi. Then, because of Sannidhi, the Prakriti kind of assumes agency. It is Jada. It has no consciousness. Like the assistant of the politician or the great leader, because he's sitting very close to that boss, he behaves like boss. He starts taking a lot of decisions. It's called delegated authority, whatever you call it. This Prakriti starts behaving as if it's a creator and creates all this samsara for whom? For Purusha. For what? Bhoga and Apavarga. You'll fast see whole this samsara. Look at the Prakriti. She's so kind. She creates everything. Then this Purusha will come and watch and enjoy. Then realize none of this is mine. I need to be myself. Then everything is abandoned. And this poor Prakriti, this great Prakriti in a way, she's like a mother. And then what happens? She withdraws like a dancer in the stage, performs the dance and walks away. Similarly, Prakriti withdraws and Purusha goes back to itself. Again, Srishti happens. That is what Sankhya says. And there are so many beautiful, explanations about this whole thing in Tantra. So here, what he's saying is, Yathava yataha prakriti purusha sanyogat bhavati kim bhavati samsara. This whole thing happens. This Kshetra appears because of what? Prakriti Purusha Sanyoga. And Prakriti creates all that, right? So you have this Astada, Apara Prakriti, then you have Para Prakriti, all this. We will discuss that as we go forward. Yad iti yehi stavara jangamadi vedehi bhinnam ityartha. And all this Kshetra is stavara jangamadi. All that is bhinna from what? Kshetra jnana. Atra aniyamena cha Chakara Prayogada Sarva Samuchayo Drashtavya. Madhusudan Saraswati is great Brahmavian. And he's saying because there is no fixed reason as to why this star has been established here, so we assume it's for Samuchaya Drashtavya. Sacha Kshetrajna Yaha. However, Kshetra to humne discuss kar liya. Who is Kshetrajna Yaha? Swarupatah, by nature what it is? Swarupatah, that is Dharma here. He has his Nirguna Nirakara. We are talking about Swarupa. The way it is. Swaprakasa Chaitanyananda Swabhavaha. What is this bhava? What is this swabhava? What is this swadharma? 3-4 words I mentioned here. Prakasa Swarupa, Chaitanya Swarupa. So Chaitanya means it's always conscious. So differentiated from Jada Varga, the Achetana Varga. It's Prakasha Rupa. That means different from Tamasa Rupa, which is the Avidya. So it is Prakasha Rupa, Jnana Rupa, and then Ananda Rupa, Satchidananda. So Ananda Rupa in what sense? Because there is no unhappiness, there is no ignorance, there is no unhappiness. Ananda Rupa. Ananda Svabhavaha, Yat Prabhavasya, as a result of which Ye Prabhava Upadhikritaha is a result of naming, which Shankaracharya already explained. Satyaya Jasya Tat Kshetra Kshetrajna Yathyatmyam. And you need to know the way this Kshetra and Kshetrajna have to be understood is different. But this Kshetra is an illusion. And Kshetrajna is the Adhisthana of this Kshetra. That is what is mentioned. But you need to differentiate them. Sarva Visheshana Visishtam. All these adjectives that we say. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma applicants to the Kshetrajna. What is this Kshetra? That is Abhidyaka. It has this 24 prakritis. Okay? Samasena Sankhepana me sunu. Mama Bachanat sunu. Listen to me. Listen from me, my dear friend, my boy. Shrutva Avadhara ityartha. केहि विस्तेरेण उक्तस्य अयं संक्षेपः इति अपेक्षायां श्रोतृर्बुद्धिप्ररोचनार्थं स्तुवन् आह. Now the student might say, किसने ये सब बताया? कहाँ से आपने सब सुन लिया? Where from you got all these theories that this is Kshetrajna, this is Kshetra? So what can I read more about it? Isn't it? Somebody comes and gives a good lecture and he quotes a few verses. What do you do with this great lecture? As soon as the lecture is over and question and answer sessions are all, the good students in schools will go to the teacher and say, "Sir, you mentioned the story. Where can I read more about it?" The teacher gives him the reference. You go to the library, you find this book, but read only so many pages. Don't waste your time. So that is Bhagavan says, Kehi Vistarena Uttasya. Because you are going to speak in Sankshepa. Can you give me some hints from where you are summarizing all this? The Sankshepa iti apekshayam. Keeping that in mind, Bhagavan says, throws the Buddhi Pravartanartham in order to sort of motivate him, expand his understanding, his intellect. Bhagavan kind of is doing who are the people, what kind of things they have mentioned. And then is verse number 4. ऋषिभिर्बहुधा गीतं छन्दोभिर्विविधैः पृथक् ब्रह्मसूत्रपदैश्चैव हेतुमद्भिर्विनिश्चितैः ऋषिभिः. Why the word rishi is mentioned? And um, our great mentor Madhusudana Saraswati is going to give reason for each word here, because he is referring to different traditions of spiritual enlightenment and practice by each of these words. And each of these words in this verse are loaded with historical references. And they are mentioned in a very cryptic, very simplistic, very straightforward way. But there is a hidden treasure behind that, and we need to unravel that. And he's giving us some guidance. So Rishi Vihi, all the rishis, Vasistas and others, Bahuda Gitam, they haven't all said in the same language. And one of the reasons why Vedanta sort of gives a lot of importance on Shastra Pramana. Shruti is only Pramana, not what, who has said what, why. Because you see, the rishis haven't spoken in one way. So what is the fundamental thing that you need to stick to is one problem, and it has to be addressed. So that is why the Vedantis say, yeah, there is pratyakya, that you can perceive things with your senses, and there is anumana, you can do inferences, indulge in logical extensions and regressions, you do upamana, sadrisha jnana, astapati, all that is there. But Shabda Pramana, that you have to go back to the Vedas, and that is authoritative. Why? Because no human being has written it. It is beyond the limitations of a mentally delimited consciousness. Rishayaha mantra drashtaraha. They have compiled. They saw the mantras. They are not the authors. These things appear to them. And it appeared, same mantras kind of appeared. They are apparent contradictions, but the Brahma Sutras kind of have resolved these contradictions to give a certain, what do you call it, an integrated argument as to what it is, and that oneness. That is the whole message of the Upanishad, which is the highest truth embodied in the Vedas. Rishivihi Bahudha Gitam, mentioned in multiple ways. Chandovi Vividhi Prathak. What are the chandas? Okay, these because Rig Veda is chandas, the Sanhita. But then you can also include other texts, right? The Vedic texts, Brahmanas and Aranyakas and Upanishads and everything. Vividhi Prathak. And again, he's saying that, the truth is not described in a fixed set of words. It's not said it's one, what do you think? You do it. All the gurus, what do they do? No, everybody has confused you. You come to me, follow this much. I always make fun of it. It's like a guy who went to some algebra classes and picked up a few sutras. A square plus b square equal to, a plus 2, a plus b whole square is a square plus b square plus 2ab. Or he sort of heard the Pythagoras theorem that a square plus b square equal to, or say p square plus b square equal to h square. So he just mucked it up. And he thinks whole of coordinate geometry and calculus and everything starts with the Pythagoras theorem. He's right. He said stick to it. You will get all the benefits of all higher mathematics. Or somebody needs Newtonian physics, and then he talks to somebody who has studied, say, Einstein and quantum mechanics and stuff like that. Well, don't you waste your time. Newton is the ultimate thing. And I see that with all these so-called guru paramparas, because they have some limited understanding. They don't want to get into this thing, and they have this dukan, they have their customers, and how do they hold their customers together. They have to keep reassuring the customers that this is the shop where you get everything you need for this life. And they say, what? You do this japa. They say, what? You do this dhyana. Or you read only this text. That's enough. The Vedantic Parampara, or Sanatana Parampara, doesn't say this. It recognizes multiple sources of explanations of the truth. Truth is one, but there are multiple expositions. However, there is a unity in all these perceptions. That is the beauty of it. Chandovi, Vividhi, Prathagat. They are all said in different ways. Then Brahma Sutra Pradesh Cheva. If you look at this Badarayana and Brahma Sutras, why they are called Brahma Sutras? These are the sutras who are explaining to you what is the Brahman. And this Brahma Sutras, which is called Nyaya Prasthana, Yukti Prasthana. So, Sutra Pradesh Cheva. Because this Brahma Sutra, there's a lot of philosophical arguments. Why do you say this? Whether Srishti, Satya, Jhoot, and how to believe in it? Should we do karma? What is the purpose of it? And a whole lot of arguments in Brahma Sutra because they are trying to see what is the tattparya of all these conflictual statements. They seem to be in conflict with each other. And they're saying, that he removes the conflicts and the doubts and the contradictions, and that has been mentioned. My friend, you want to know that truth? Are you seriously interested? First, recognize that we have a plural tradition, and we have the truth discussed in multiple ways. However, my dear friend, there is a certain unity, and that unity supersedes these diversities. You want to reach there, it doesn't come easy by sitting in one shop with one guru who says, you jump 25 times a day saying Hare Ram, you get it. All of the people have got it. He sells his product, but that is not our tradition. We have to do a bit of hard work, and that's why in the Vedanta Parampara, what do they say? They say read Bhagavad Gita, and they say Upanishads, and then read Brahma Sutras, read a bit of grammar, but also don't close your eyes to maybe Shanti Parva of Mahabharata or certain chapters, Manusmriti, which are on Sannyasa or Yoga Vasishtha, and there are several other tantric texts which are also very rich in explanation. And they never disrespect the Vedantic secrets. I was just looking at one tantric text, and he's saying that this is actually all the time in conformity with the highest truth hidden and elaborated in the Upanishads. You should refute the Vedas. They don't do it. Because the wise ones know that if you ignore, try to bypass, or don't even try to reach out the ultimate secrets which are enumerated, which are explained, underlined in the Vedanta, you're kind of remaining a blind person, And that's what Shankaracharya says, that if you go into this misinterpretation, it's like a blind leading blind. He only hurts others. And therefore, if somebody doesn't know this parampara, ignore him. It's not parampara the way the Christianity or the Islamic paramparas or these modern gurus, half-educated, half-baked ideas, they sell that truth. Dukan chalate hain. And not those kind of compelling, kind of induced attitudinal changes so that you remain a slave in that particular tradition. No, it's not that. Ignore him. Is he knowing that this is the ultimate destination? Yes, he knows. Then he says, I am emphasizing on this aspect. Fine, there is no problem. Because the ultimate source of everything doesn't have to be in one language. He's saying, Chandovi Vividhi Prathagat and Rishivihi Bhuda Gitam. So we'll do the elaboration tomorrow. I'm not pushing through it because this is a beautiful aspect. And now the following verses are very easy and not very difficult to deal with. We sort of dealt with them in chapter 7 and 8. We'll deal with them again, but with more elaborate understanding and explanations as offered by Bhasyakara and Madhusudan Saraswati. So I'll stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask.